do them
Okay.
today.
Both flying blind here.
We're flying blind. All right, that's really the motto of this show. And hello, everyone, and welcome to the MGN Football Tailgate Report. This is actually our final full episode of the Tailgate Report this season. Of course, with the Grandville Bulldogs season having come to a close, we may have some more different things based on what's going on later on in the playoff run. He's Chandler Timmer. I'm Nate Dreyer, by the way. Thank you for joining us. All right, CT, we'll get right into it and kind of get through this show. We've got a great interview coming up with Coach Stiegel that essentially will be the bulk of our season review for the Grandville Bulldogs. 48-26, Caledonia over Grandville. I mean, a doomed day from the start is kind of the way you can maybe most bluntly put it for the Bulldogs. Carson Smith, Mike Medeiros, Braden LaCroix out. We learned, and Coach Stiegel talks about it, all those fumbles. Cash Ruff breaks his hand on the first drive of the game at quarterback, and that's where the fumbles came from. I mean, by the way, the fact he had that passing drive and threw a touchdown with that is that much more impressive. But, I mean, just a day where you look at how they played, the mistakes on special teams that the Grandville teams never make under Coach Stiegel. I mean, it just piles up of things that you would never imagine all happening together. It all happens, and that's where the loss and the way they lost comes from.
Yeah, an unfortunate end of the season for the Bulldogs, and just so many uncharacteristic things. I think kind of looking back, much more understanding of kind of what was happening.
Right.
Looking back at the injury, I was probably a little hard on Cash Ruff during the game, thinking, what are we doing, dropping all these snaps, and part of that can be on the quarterback and the center as well. But yeah, definitely. I mean, totally understandable when you're talking about a broken hand and trying to field the snap and the pain, and I'm sure he's trying to play through that. And so I totally take back anything I may have said that was about that. But I don't think I think it did. But
no, you're good. You're the most PC person I've ever met in my life on the air. I think you're fine.
Nope. So, but I mean, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of understand some of those turnovers, but you're just not used to seeing that from the Bulldogs. So that's obviously going to hurt, especially when you're going against a Caledonia offense that doesn't need a lot of help to put up some big points. They get the couple touchdowns on special teams, and I mean, it's one of the things where you don't really see the punt unit for the Bulldogs a lot throughout the course of the season, and then you just see the Fighting Scots coming up with attack and some good field position situation where they can be aggressive and kind of making something happen on those special teams plays that ended up kind of blowing that score out of proportion.
Yeah, just unusual. I mean, and for Grandville, what we're going to do, like I said, we're going to go to Coach, then we'll have our season recap. There's not too much to say about this game really beyond what was just in front of you and whatever, and Coach wraps it up. But for Caledonia, I mean, how should they feel this week? Because first off, if there were questions about Mason McKenzie's health, answered. He looked 115% in that game. This might be the confidence boost they needed heading into their own Rockford rematch this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I think they kind of answered some of their injury questions. They looked like they kind of had a good balance last time against the Bulldogs. It was mostly Mason McKenzie doing all the damage, and this time able to get Townsend involved in it too. Part of that was the way the Bulldogs were, trying to attack him and stop him. But it's good to see, for the Caledonia's perspective, good to see Townsend get in there and look like he's healthy as well. You get that backfield back to at least looked close to full health. I think that's definitely going to be dangerous to them in their running game that they love to use so much. I think they definitely able to pass the first test of the playoffs, beat the Bulldogs again, and now they get the rematch that they wanted for a couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And now it kind of opens up what our schedule is. By the way, I didn't mention top of the show. Kind of a unique one. We're going to be in Division 5. We're going to have Belding and Muskegon Oakridge at Oakridge this Friday, and that's a battle of 9-1 teams. Good teams that do things. It's going to be a unique matchup. I think it's going to be a fun matchup. Our plan was to go to Byron Center. Of course, the Bulldogs got upset in pretty big fashion last weekend, so that kind of changed some of our plans, and we'll see what happens going forward as well. It's not quite going to be last year's playoff run where we just jumped on the Crusaders and rode them all the way. I mean, we'll see if they pull an upset here against South Christian, which another one of our Michigan Sports Radio teams have the coverage of. That's why we're not jumping on UC yet, but who knows? That's all coming up. All right, that's a just good, quick 1,000-foot view. Let's quick step aside, and then we'll hand it over to our Coach's Corner segment with Coach Stiegel.
The sinister cries haunted Mary through the night. Dawn neared, and still the voice tormented her. She ran towards the safety of her car, flung open the door, and a coyote had somehow gotten locked inside. But the damaged interior was covered thanks to Farmers Insurance. Coyote Carpool, August 1st, 2015. Talk to a farmer's agent. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Contact the Scott Bates Agency today, 616-531-3441. A proud supporter of MichiganGameNight.com.
I'm Randy Hansen, president of Centennial Securities Company. Recently, I read this statement. When it comes to developing intimacy remotely, sometimes it's better to be heard and not seen. That got me thinking, and I discovered that since this pandemic began, voice-only calls have increased by 78%, and the length of these calls has also increased. Today, Zoom is touted as the savior of business, academia, and keeping families connected. But there is some evidence that video apps make us feel awkward and unfulfilled. There's even an app available that rates your background when you're on Zoom. Then there's the phone, which is basically a handheld texting machine, a social networking black hole. But mouth-to-ear communication is on the rise, and it is most welcome. Like I said earlier, sometimes it's better to be heard and not seen. At Centennial Securities, we love hearing from you, even if we can't always see you. If you're a Centennial client, you know what I mean. If not, isn't it about time?
Centennial Securities Company, member SIPC and FINRA.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Tailgate Report, and now joined to wrap up this Grandville Bulldogs season with Bulldogs head coach Eric Stiegel. Coach, how are you doing today?
Doing good. I wish we had practice coming up today, with the guys, but doing well, as you get some early reflections back on the 2022 season.
Yep, and let's start, I guess, with the reflections on the last contest against Caledonia. I know a lot of tough circumstances in terms of injuries and different things coming into the game. The game itself, just a lot of things that you don't normally see your teams, of course, which are so prepared to make mistakes. Just take us through kind of some of your takeaways from the loss to Caledonia.
Well, number one, Caledonia played well. I think they had some good plans for us. Really, really good players on that team, and so we got to give them a lot of credit first. It was a weird week for us. We on Tuesday, our quarterback, who's an all-conference player, one of the best players in the area, Carson Smith was injured at practice, kind of in a fluke, individual drill on defense. We still don't quite know the severity of that injury, and we're hoping it's not very much for him long term. As a baseball player, we don't think it is, but until we get the MRI results back, we won't know. But we knew he wasn't going to be able to play probably Thursday. With that, we also were without our all-conference tackle Mike Medeiros, which was kind of a surprise for us. So he had some medical issues too that were very serious. He is good right now, thankfully.
That's good. Yep.
But was not able to play. So and still obviously without Braden LaCroix too, who was a really good tight end for us. So we went into that game still feeling really good about it. And Cash Ruff, who we had a lot of confidence in, he broke his hand the opening drive of the game. So that was, you have a backup quarterback, and then he breaks his hand, and he tried to play through that and did some good things, but ultimately too painful. And also, you saw, I think, 4 or 5 fumbled snaps, and that was really a direct relation to him breaking his throwing hand. Okay. So that put us in a tough spot with some turnovers early, and then having a sophomore JV quarterback have to really play the majority of that game. So it was weird. I'll tell you what, it was weird. To see the team you had all year, and then not that we still didn't play well at times, but to kind of go out there and be in some of those circumstances with that. But that doesn't take away that they had some good schemes special team wise. We had a bad snap on a punt that led to a touchdown, and then they blocked one where they had a guy come through, and that kind of catapulted them. We whipped that, it was 13. I think it was 13-6, and then again we had some fumbled snaps in there, I think due to a broken hand. So. I think a little bit bummed how that ended. We would have loved to obviously been at full strength or close to full strength going against a team like that to see where we were. But, you give them a lot of credit. You give them a lot of credit for playing well. And then I give our guys a lot of credit, too, for really battling, the entire game and not in any way, feeling sorry for themselves or – looking at the score early when they kind of jumped on us there midway through the second quarter, we continued to play and played hard all the way to the end.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we kind of commented on that on the broadcast too, just the way that continued to fight down the stretch. Amazing, like you said, Cash too. Just so many unfortunate things that kind of piled up. I guess let's start to take a look at this season. Let's start with kind of your captains and your seniors. I know everyone talks about how this is one of, if not the youngest team you've ever had, but you had some really, really incredible leadership that I think helped bring everyone else around. I guess kind of start by just telling us about that senior group this year now that you can look back on a whole season, with them, a whole career with them.
Right. Well, I think these guys, I told them they came a long way from when they were freshmen. I don't know that anybody would have thought when they were freshmen that this would be a group that would be contending for an OKRA championship and being mentioned up there with some of the best teams in the state, and playing with those guys, and being one of the best teams in West Michigan. I told those guys, when they look back on things, I think they're going to recognize they were part of some really good teams here, and unfortunately for us, we ran into some really good teams in the playoffs. I think you start with Carson Smith. Kind of ironic that, his lone playoff start as a quarterback was as a freshman.
Right.
He got brought up, obviously, in some other crazy circumstances in 2019. Right. He never really got a chance to start a playoff game. But proved to be, I think, one of the best quarterbacks we've had here and one of the best players in the conference over the past couple of years. I think he was tremendous this year for us and came up in so many big situations for us, throwing for close to 900 yards, rushing for close to 300 yards, 15 total touchdowns. Between the air and the ground, a lot of 2-point conversions, and just a lot of big plays when we needed it on 3rd and 4th down. I think, you also look at Drew Hungerford, who stepped in for an injured Bladen McCoy and had 2 touchdown catches in his 2 games at tight end this year. Just a clutch performer. Aiden Dorn, one of our defensive leaders and emotional leaders in the team, played big for us. And then I think, Tyson Mann, our other captain, who I think you saw, to me, again, one of the best players on the field on Saturday. Rushed for over 100 yards, had some big catches, had an interception, just does what Tyson Mann does.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the kid, you see a kid who's like 6'1", 165 pounds. He's fast, but not that fast. He jumps high, but not that high. But he is the epitome of a playmaker, a gamer, a kid who works his butt off, and just a great high school athlete. You'll see that in his upcoming season. So, really proud of those captains. But I'm also really proud of guys like Braden LaCroix and Logan Stockwell, who hardly saw the field last year as juniors, and then came on to be key players for us as seniors. Same with J.J. Bugard at center. Really, really worked hard in the offseason to get stronger and did a good job at center for us. Landon Hunt was a 2-way starter for us at defensive end and guard for us. There were some guys that as juniors didn't see a ton of action, but put that work in, developed, worked really hard, and I think gained the trust of all the teammates and coaches and had really good senior years for us. And there's a few other guys too, in that mix that, they came out and had key roles as seniors for us. And even though, yes, we are really young in that, I want to give a lot of credit to our seniors because, without those guys that I just mentioned kind of stepping up from their junior to senior year, and taking our roles, we wouldn't have had the kind of team that we had this year, with that. So a lot of credit to those guys as seniors.
Yeah, for sure. And as you always seem to do, give me a perfect segue into the other side of things. Let's talk about some of the youth on this year's team. I mean, so many underclassmen, so many juniors that you played. Tell me about all these guys and some of the big strides they made this year, because, we were so impressed with them watching from week 1 to the playoff week.
Yeah, I think that it was a weird thing for us at the beginning of the year because, you look back, I think, and you're like, well, who's going to take all these spots? And, it ended up being a lot of underclassmen, a lot of sophomores, and obviously a freshman too. But you look at some of our returners that are going to be seniors coming back, and I think it starts with Mike Medeiros and Stephen Jackson. Those guys were outstanding on the offensive line for us and the defensive line all year. Those 2 guys will anchor an offensive line next year, and I think it'll be really good. If you look at our, you look at the running back spot, Carson Kopko ran for 920 yards, averaged 8.6 yards a carry, close to 8.7 yards a carry, 10 touchdowns. He'll be coming back at fullback for us, which is a big thing. Cash Ruff had a good season for us on defense, and also obviously we saw a little bit of what he could do at quarterback before he got injured. There, Avon Cott contributed heavily for us in the secondary. Saw some big games out of him. We anticipate he'll anticipate he'll do some big things down the stretch next year for us, and he'll have a great offseason. And I'm sure I'm missing guys that did contribute and will contribute there. But I think if you look at our sophomore class, it's a really good class. Reed Graderson, middle linebacker for us. Easton Sadinsky has a running back and a defensive back. Played well for us. Emery Moody came on the past 2 games and was a joke for our defensive lines. Also, on the JV team was their top running back. So we think he'll do really well. Carson Kubzak, one of our better D linemen as a sophomore. And Brett Becker was a starting guard for us all year and played on the D line. You look at that sophomore class, and we're excited about those guys. And also, again, we had a good JV team that lost 1 game in the OK Red this year. As a JV team. And then you look at our freshmen. Obviously, Cam Terry was outstanding. One of the best players in the conferences, and I think one of the best running backs ever coached. Period. That's right up there with his brother. Ran for over 1,300 yards, 13 touchdowns, 7.7 yards a carry, and just really explosive. Really excited about those guys. And then our freshman group was 7-2 this year. That's without a guy like Cam, I almost call him Cam, but that's without a Jaden Terry.
We've done that all year too. Don't worry.
Right. They both were 28. They look similar. They have somewhat similar running style. So yeah, that's not. I'm sure he doesn't mind. Getting mistaken sometimes for a 2-time All-State, 3-time running back. So those and his older brother supports him tremendously too. So and that. But so we're really excited about. We're really excited about the guys we have coming back. And my message to those guys, and it hasn't really been said yet because, to me, when the season ends, I really want to reflect on our seniors. Right. And, it's emotional for them. It's emotional for everybody because that team will, really no longer, they're never going to play with each other together again, even though a lot of those young guys will play, they'll never get to play with that group of seniors. So, that 2022 football team is done. But, as time goes on over, the next month or so, we start to try to get those guys ready for their off season and set some goals ahead of them. My message to them is that nothing's automatic. It's not automatic that you're going to come back and be in a position, to compete in the playoffs and to, hopefully compete for an OK Red championship and, win big games against all your rivals, which we did in terms of our neighborhood rivals, Hudsonville, Jenison, Byron Center, our border battles, we won all those. It's not a guarantee that happens again just because a lot of the same guys are coming back because, the teams we play, they're going to work. They're going to work extremely hard. And, we got to make sure we exceed that. We have to make sure that our guys know that there's nothing's going to be given to them, and I think they know that. And that everybody we play, we get a target on our back because we've been successful in my time here, and I think everybody that plays us knows that they're going to bring their A game. So, and we get that when we play teams. So, we're gonna have to have a tremendous off season, both in the weight room, classroom, and just overall mentality wise. But as it kind of sinks in that this season is over, we won't go to practice today. In the coming days for me, my attention and we'll really turn to getting our underclassmen ready to be the best football players possible next year.
All right, yeah, that's great. I know I'm already excited again to be able to see next year and can't wait for it as always. I guess let's. Just kind of to wrap this thing up, one of the things I always like about your offense is, of course, everyone knows it's a T and whatever, but every year you have little wrinkles, and I've kind of waited to the end of the season to ask about this just because, just in case you want to give anything away. Is that a single wing? Is that what you call that you guys were throwing in there? Technically,
we mixed that in. Yeah, single wing, which is I told our guys is obviously a precursor, one of the original offenses in football. Precursor to actually the T offense. The T offense, the straight T, was kind of considered at one point the modern. The T offense was the first offense to really put a quarterback under the center, to where. Usually, the little football history, a quarterback was called a quarterback because he was a quarter of the way back. Mm-hmm. And then your halfback was halfway back, and your fullback was the guy who got the ball. in the single wing. So I told our guys that at one point. I said, there's a little of that, but a lot of that was designed because we knew we had a quarterback in Carson Smith that was very talented, and we had a guy like Tyson Mann. And I think if Tyson wouldn't have got hurt, I think we would have saw more of that. When he got hurt, that kind of pressed us into just some different areas of things we wanted to do. But we're always going to look to even when we stay within our T offense, we always look to try to maximize our kids' ability, and I think that starts with the quarterback ability. We're going to look at what our quarterbacks do well, and we're going to try to emphasize that. And we're going to look at what our skill kids do well, and we're going to try to emphasize that. So obviously with a lot of pieces coming back, we'll see how those kids develop physically in the offseason and what they do. But yeah, there's always going to be some tinkering from me and our offensive coaches in the offseason to figure out, hey, what is gonna make us the hardest to defend. We know what our base is, and I love that we got a heavy dose of kids coming back that are really good. But we're gonna major in the T, but we're gonna have some other things that we're well versed in, so that we can attack people, and really more than just attack people, we can emphasize what our kids do well. And that's always what I want to do as a coach, is try to maximize our kids' ability and put us in a spot to on offense to score a lot of points and win games.
No, that's awesome. I just know, like seeing the single wing, because I'm a little bit of a historian in the sport, right. Always too. Yep. It was when you first ran that out, I'm like, oh, look, we've gone 30s to 1920s here. We've gone Hallis to Rockland.
Exactly.
So I found
That's exactly right.
I found that
right.
Really funny and a great out year. Well, thanks again, Coach, all year for your time with us and everything. It's always a pleasure to get to cover you and the kids in this program.
Well, Nate, I appreciate you guys do a heck of a job. And,
Thank you.
Thanks for highlighting all our kids in Grandville football, and look forward to talking to you again next year, probably in the summer, as we, I'm excited for these guys to get, 9-10 months of physical development in front of them and mental development as young adults, and excited to see where these guys end up next year. So thank you very much as always, and go Dogs.
All right, go Dogs. Grandville head coach Eric Stiegel with us here on MGN.
Daniel the deer danced everywhere. He pranced through fields and jigged through rivers. Then he saw it. What a stage! A place no deer had dared dance before. The hood of a brand new car.
Hey, my car!
And the car was covered, thanks to Farmers Insurance. Deer Dance Floor, December 1st, 2014. Talk to a farmer's agent. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Contact the Scott Bates Agency today, 616-531-3441. A proud supporter of MichiganGameNight.com.
All right, and of course, thanks again. Welcome back. And of course, thank you to Grandville head coach Eric Stiegel. Always great to talk to him. Everyone else, I mean, as I said, it's such a pleasure to get to cover this team. The coaching staff, the players, on and on. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's so great. And let's wrap up the 2022 Grandville Bulldogs, Chandler. So a team that ultimately finishes the year with 3 losses, 2 to Cal, 1 to Rockford. I mean, you throw in a Grand Blanc win, you throw in a Hudsonville win, you throw in a Byron Center win, won all their other rivalry games against Jenison and the like as well. So, I think a team, first off, that is such a young team that made such big strides throughout the year, dealing with huge injuries and huge adversity down to the very last minute of the season. It's a team that has a lot to take from, I think, at the end of the year. A team that I don't think the record, the full performance tell the story of what this year was, but in particular what's coming. And I don't want the recap of this season to be solely talking about next year, but you're always going to have to do that a little bit when you're talking about 6 underclassmen and, a smaller group of seniors. Yeah,
I think that's kind of one thing that kind of you forget as being around the Bulldogs and watching every week is just how young this team really is. I think kind of unique in the fact that the seniors that they have were, true leaders when you're looking for guys offensively and defensively as captains that are going to be out there. You've clearly got those guys. You heard them on the interviews throughout the course of the season. And so you're definitely going to miss those guys and, hate to see them go out with a loss like that. But tremendous careers and what they were able to accomplish, I think, still a very successful season. I'm sure, your Coach Stiegel talk, you just heard him talk about how, they really accomplished quite a bit. I think it's not so much, you look at the first round exit in the playoffs, and it's not so much on who the Bulldogs were as a team as much as just how good Caledonia and Rockford, also in that district, really are. I mean, you're looking at two of the really good teams in the state, and just unfortunate that they're in the same conference and in the same district as you when you're talking about head-to-head. But I think when you look at the regular season, some of the big moments they had throughout this year and also through the seniors that are graduating throughout their careers, something to be very proud of.
I've got the defensive highlights from the year from Coach Landis up behind me right now. So again, you look at this Grandville team. You talked about that special senior group as great leaders or whatever. I guess I'll kind of turn over to you. What are kind of some of the highlights, I guess, you're going to find to this season? I know I have mine. I think you're watching that Grand Blanc game. I think that, to me, was from the very start, it was kind of the shot across the bow about what this team is, what this team could be. That certainly was really big. Obviously the Hudsonville win, I think, is the win of the year in terms of rivalry win and a conference win. I think those are probably the two main moments I think are the ones you're going to be able to hang your hat on to really look at what this team was able to achieve.
Yeah, I think the Grand Blanc win was kind of the first statement that of what this team was going to be and be able to accomplish throughout the regular season. I think we all thought they had a chance to be a very good team, but then you go across the state and you beat a team like that in week one and kind of really establish some of those players that stepped up into the bigger roles were going to really be there and be good players for this team. You saw it, all across the board, offensively, defensively, early on, and it kind of carried over, set the tone for what the rest of the season was going to be. We've seen the Bulldogs throughout the years have such a tough start to the schedule, and then just trying to rebound from that. And this year, they were kind of able to set the tone early on and carry that throughout the course of the regular season. I think the Hudsonville win, as you said, another one where a Hudsonville team that all season long we talked about could be a playoff team right on the verge, and even though their record wasn't where they wanted it to be, I think still a quality win for the Bulldogs. I think, it's just a lot of moments like that where the Bulldogs able to accomplish some things on the field. Individual play especially too. You see some guys really step up and make some plays there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the recap of this year. And, of course, you're losing guys like Carson Smith, Tyson Mann, so many more on the field in terms of the seniors, but so much youth that comes back. And what's kind of wrap up the preview a little bit, again, Coach Stiegel said more than we could probably say on our recaps. That's why we can keep this a little bit brief. But let's wrap up by kind of looking at what we had this year, what's coming forward. The first key point, of course, is all of the running backs are outside of Tyson Mann, but Sadinsky played most of the year. So you get all of that kind of bulk of the season group of backs back. Jaden Terry is going to have an unbelievable season, as we know, every year coming up here. We know what Kopko is able to do. Sadinsky, towards the end, started showing some real flashes as a sophomore, too. We're going to see this team in the backfield flourish to a way, especially with a lot of guys coming back on the offensive line as well. Offensively, they have a chance to be a really, really, really special unit next year.
Yeah, I think you have to be excited when you look at what multiple guys in that backfield were able to accomplish as such young players. And I think we talk about it year after year when you've got three backs in the backfield like that. It's just kind of the way the numbers work. You're going to be rotating guys pretty much every year. There's going to be some seniors in there. And, of course, Tyson Mann is going to be graduating from the football program. But I think when you've got those guys already there, you've pretty much got your starting backs ready to roll out there. You kind of know or at least what their roles will be expected next year coming into it. And I think that you get a jump start on what next season really can be when you've got those roles established. You've seen them kind of in place throughout the course of this season, and you can kind of jump right into that next year in the once the training camp and off season. Already looking forward to next year, but you can kind of put those pieces back together, and I think you can really expand on it, and excited to see the growth, both physically as younger players and also just mentally and what they can accomplish in this system.
And remember, guys that we didn't get a chance to really see will be back as well in terms of healthy. Figueroa, McKnight, other guys out there that there were guys that missed this entire season, even younger guys that were injured that will get to step into a role. And I think that's where the defensive side of the ball, there's going to be a lot of guys that I think you're going to have to regenerate, but I think there's guys there to be able to regenerate roles. Avon Cott in the secondary gets to be a leader, Sadinsky. You essentially get to bring your safeties back, which is huge in Coach Landis' defensive system. So that's big. Quarterback will be key, but again, Cash Ruff has all the tools. He didn't get a true chance to show himself, and that's what we learned is, what was that, that broken hand wound up not just taking away the Bulldogs' chance in a lot of ways to win that game or to keep pace, but also it took away his chance to really show what kind of special player he is. And that's the thing, is there's so much potential in this team for next year. They showed flashes this year. They were able to get that leadership burst, this year from some of the older guys. It'll be interesting to see who steps in. Like, I think if you're at any point, if you're a little bit down as a Bulldog fan on how this season ended, losing to Cal both times, losing to Rockford, wondering if they're going to be able to do it, like, I would look at this year and look at that first game, how well they played against Cal, look at the flashes this next time, look at what's coming back for those teams as well, and I'm just saying, be very encouraged and I don't want to put too much pressure on it, but be very encouraged where things are for next year, because there was a building this year, and we even said it to each other before the season started, talking about even, before 2022, talking about 23, like, be ready for a little bit of a crescendo in a building, I think. And all things have to go right. You never know what happens in the offseason, how guys may or may not develop. But, like, if you are a Bulldog fan, if you are down right now and kind of wondering what next year may look like, I think I can tell you, for one thing, yes, there are huge pieces. There are guys you'd never want to lose from your team that are gone, but, like, I think there's probably no one that maybe is returning more and feels better about what's returning than Grandville. I mean, even Cal may not feel as good about what's returning as Grandville.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times you kind of, when you lose a lot of seniors, especially at, positions like the quarterback, secondary, running back, you always have to kind of wonder where those guys are going to come from. And I think you can kind of see the pieces already there. I mean, you kind of know, you've seen them play, and now it's just going to be a matter of them sliding into more of the leadership role as they become seniors in the following season, and kind of take on that expanded, role that comes along with that. But I think you definitely, the names that are out there and going to be filling those positions, and so definitely I think there's, if you can consider this season as a building year, which was a great season, 7-win season. I mean, I think that's the pressure, if you want to call it that, but also the opportunity to look at a 2-loss regular season as a potential down year. I think I don't think that's what it was, but I think if you can picture the future of what they could potentially accomplish, you might end up looking back and saying that this was the start of something.
Yeah, and way too early predictions. I mean, I think there's going to be a bit of turnover at the top of the OK Red next year, slightly. I think West Ottawa is coming. I think East Kentwood showed some things. Losing Mason McKenzie's big. Now we saw what Brody Betzer, the backup quarterback, could look like, and you've got the other D1 guys back, so Cal's not dropping off next year yet. Rockford probably not going to drop off, but you do have to replace Van and Howe. Now, this time last year we talked about replacing Ahern and, whatever. They might go a lot further this year than they did last year. But I'm just saying, like, the top of the OK Red might be even heavier than it was in past years, and I think Grandville's going to be a big part of it next year. So, a lot of great things in those big moments in the year. Man, how much fun was it to that Grand Blanc win in Flint? That was a fun atmosphere and a great win, and what a shock across the state the Bulldogs sent. The Hudsonville win was, one where I think it really was a planting the flag moment for the Bulldogs over Hudsonville again in a rivalry that they've started to kind of take advantage of in the past couple years now. I think, those moments stand out. The Cal and Rockford games are the tough moments, but a lot of big wins both sides of the ball. Yet another great year of Grandville Bulldogs football. I'm looking forward to the rest of the playoff run, but always, of course, do not look forward to the end of covering the maroon and white each season. All right. Thanks again to the Grandville Bulldogs, to Coach Stiegel, to everyone in that program, Coach Landis, of course, and all the guys that joined us this year. Been great to cover them again during this season. All right, welcome back. Nate with you. Chandler is gone. I'm actually in Chandler's seat based on the last frame you just saw. We've shot this show a little bit out of sequence because he had kind of a tight deadline. He's in the Flag Football League. I think we've talked about that. For some reason, my 5'7" butt was not invited to play in that league. Kind of weird. Also, I run a 6'5" 40. But actually, funny enough, so we record this show at like the front of the office at my day job, my family's company. I can watch him. He's playing across the street right here, so I can see him over there. Hopefully, it doesn't get lit up too bad. So he's right over here in spirit playing flag football on this 35-degree night. I wouldn't want to be outside for sure. So I am alone going to give you the lowdown on our MGN game of the week. It's a district championship in Division 5. It's Belding and Oakridge, pair of 9-1 teams. This is a really exciting game. I think we are really, really looking forward to doing this game for sure because it is a battle of complete opposites when you look at how you may construct a team. A little bit kind of like what we saw last week, Grandville versus Cal in terms of how the formations are. Of course, they both just ran the heck out of the ball. Grandville actually threw the ball more than Cal did until late in that second half, and actually for the entire game they threw it more. So what can you expect in this game? Well, you've got Oakridge, 3+ wide receivers at all time. They'll throw it around. They have a power back. They'll kind of run in between the tackles and bump off of guys. Meanwhile, Belding, they're on a power T. Kind of a unique look that we'll get to out of the power T, but it is a T. So the Black Knights running the T, the Eagles of Oakridge running a spread. Let's talk a little bit about these teams. Let's start with Oakridge. We'll get some of their season highlights up behind me when I get through what this team does on the year. So as I said, primarily out of a 4 wide receiver set. Sometimes they use a 3 wide receiver set with a wing back and H-back. That's how they'll run the football, and they run the football with their junior tailback, Trevor Jones. Tough runner. He went for 263 yards, 4 touchdowns last week. Look to Trevor Jones to lead the way offensively in terms of the ground attack for Oakridge. That's going to still want to be the base of their offense if they're able to get it going against a very tough front line on the other side of the ball. Then it comes down to Matt Danachek, their senior quarterback, a really experienced, really solid guy. He can spread the football all over the place, moves very well in the pocket if you do get some pressure on him. Not as much of kind of a downfield type runner, but Danachek, a guy that is very good at delivering the football, getting out, extending plays, finding receivers again to the spread field that he's going to have to work with. And he can move around in the pocket some. He is at his best scrambling to extend plays and to make things happen, maybe more than just a guy that's, scrambling like a Mason McKenzie that's scrambling out of designed runs. He can certainly move a lot, as almost all quarterbacks at the high school level can do to some extent, but he is such a good passer. He's one of those guys that's dangerous when he's extending plays to get the ball downfield, to find guys open. They've got, a trio or even 4 or 5 really good receivers they'll put out there at one time. They'll do some empty sets as well, but Trevor Jones running the ball, Danachek's going to throw it all over the place then as well, and that's kind of how they're going to be able to do things. They got a really, really tough defense, and of course, the D5 level, almost everyone's playing both ways. Trevor Jones is going to lead the offense. He's also going to lead the inside of the defense at linebacker. So they gave up 42 points to Whitehall, which, of course, is a division higher team, and Whitehall has done that offensively to everyone. Outside of that, they've never given up, this is Oakridge, more than 19 points, and they've allowed less than 10 in 4 of their last 5. The outlier was the Whitehall game. So they're a great tackling team. They're opportunistic. They get turnovers. You saw in that last highlight coming back to September as well. They're very good picking off passes and making things happen. So, of course, Belding, not a team that's going to pass the ball much as their base, but when they maybe are forced to go to it, this is an Oakridge secondary that really can find a way to make you pay. So keep an eye out for that with Oakridge, a really fun team to see. And Belding runs something that's very familiar to us at game night, but also a little different. I mean, we did 2 T teams with both Zeeland West and Grandville last weekend. They run a power T, but it typically isn't a tight 2 tight end T. They typically have 1 flanking wide receiver at least out wide. You see it right here in this first formation. They have their single receiver, Owen Meinke, out wide. So that you have to keep an eye out for, certainly, with what they want to do. 2022, their first outright league title since 1999 for the Black Knights, as they are, of course, now known formerly the Redskins. They run a T offense that runs that single wide receiver, single tight end, unique look. Their running back group, if you're a Grandville Bulldogs fan, looking at what you want to do and listening to a game this weekend, tuning in still for us, an offense that reminds me a lot of the 2019-2020 Grandville running back group. Asai Batter, senior left running back, kind of your bell cow back. If you're a Grandville fan, a little bit like Marcel Love, he's maybe a little bit bigger than Love, but kind of your bell cow. A lot of times running between the tackles, running outside, getting it done. You see him score on this play right here in the middle. Coden McNeil, senior speed fullback, kind of like Cam Terry on that Bulldog unit. He's very fast, very capable. You see this formation they run right here is actually a wing T. They're going to do some of that as well. By the way, we just 2 backs and then one that moves on to the wing. So they do a lot of different things in their offense. And lastly, they've got Hunter Conrad, their big junior power back on the right side, kind of like Zach Vanderwest on that 19 and 20 Bulldogs team. So you've got the speed up the middle, you got the power back on the right, you've got the do-it-everything kind of well-rounded back on the left, plus they have a wide receiver to spread the field. This is a really, really good T offense, one of the higher scoring offenses in the state through kind of the first 5-6 weeks of the season for Belding, and they do a lot of very dangerous things to you. Because of that, Anthony Sabinski, their senior quarterback, just very apt at everything. Throws the ball very well, runs the ball especially very well. Very, very quick guy. So he makes plays in all directions. So Sabinski, perfect. Again, if you're a Grandville fan, as the Owen West fan, an MGN fan, you know all about the T offense and what it takes to do well, and this team certainly does those things very well. That is Belding. And again, the X factor of this team is going to be Owen Meinke, their senior receiver, and he plays that flanking receiver out wide, out of the tee on almost every snap. They have one tight end still, but they'll have him out wide. You pull one defensive back, you pull one guy out of the box, guaranteed. That's good to see, while still keeping some power with one tight end in there, so you don't completely have the field spread and only 5 guys up front blocking for you. So that's a really critical thing, I think, to be able to see. You see their running backs on screen, Batter, Conrad, and McNeil. In terms of their key players from last week's game that we had highlights of behind me. Also, again, Meinke and all these guys, lockdown corner, great defensive team as well that you've seen throughout the year. So that'll be very big when you've got a guy like Meinke that's good as a guy out wide defensively, as he is also offensively. It just is a really unique game in terms of how things set up, and I'm really excited to see Belding versus Oakridge this weekend. We're going to be at Oakridge, placing their benches. It's actually going to be a little bit crowded. I know there's actually even a couple broadcasts that wanted to be there because it is such a unique game, 9-1 versus 9-1, and a unique clash of styles as well based on where they go next. Kind of who knows in terms of our continuing coverage. Again, we're not going, depending on who wins, we're not going up to the UP to cover Belding if they win, or Oakridge for that matter, but Belding more likely kind of Oakridge well covered by some of the other Muskegon things, and we're going to be bouncing around for a couple weeks. The goal, of course, is that we're going to be all the way to Ford Field again with coverage. It's just trying to find how we're getting there right now with some of what's happened in terms of some of the losses that different teams have had so far. But again, it's going to be a great one. I mean, it is completely opposite side of the spectrum. The odd thing is Oakridge last week, despite being the spread team, ran the ball, as I said, 263 yards, 4 touchdowns for Trevor Jones. So they're going to run the ball, I think, still. I think both teams are still going to try to run the ball first. Of course, the T's are going to try to run the ball first. But even the spread team, I think, is going to be looking to do some of those zone running concepts and so forth. Maybe bringing that H back and going to more of their 3 wide receiver sets that they like to run out of, kind of like what Caledonia does. But then the pass game off that, Belding has a pass game built in more than most T teams, meaning that they always have a wide receiver. It's a unique look I'm really interested to see, and something I'm curious if you look at some of the talent Grandville has next year, if it's something the Bulldogs may utilize more. Coach Stiegel talked about how they're always looking to evolve and add those little wrinkles like the single wing this year to their offense. So all that is really good and will be really fun to see. Belding and Oakridge, 6:30 p.m. on Friday, MichiganSportsRadio.com/MGN, and then, of course, anywhere else that you may listen to our MGN games. That will be that it can be a ton of fun. See the Black Knights and the Eagles in that one. All right, we'll step aside. When we come back, Chandler, I'm going to magically go back over there. Chandler's going to magically reappear here, and we're going to give out our awards from this year, Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Team of the Year, and we're going to also break down some of the big district championship matchups across MGN, also pretty much all matchups that are going to be on MichiganSportsRadio.com as well, that we're going to, the ones we're going to talk about here. I think actually all of them that we talk about are going to be on MichiganSportsRadio.com to listen to on Friday, so make sure you check that out as well, and of course you check out our game, Belding and Oakridge, 6:30 p.m. Friday. I'll say it one more time. You know where to find it, MichiganSportsRadio.com/MGN, on the MGN YouTube, on the MGN Twitter, on the MGN Facebook, all of those different places. That's where you can find us. That's all.
I'm Randy Hansen, president of Centennial Securities. I've heard it said that professional coaches measure success in rings, college coaches measure success in championships, and high school coaches measure it in titles. But youth coaches measure success in smiles. At Centennial Securities, we're like the youth coach. Our success is measured by the smiles on the faces of our satisfied clients. If you're a Centennial Securities customer, you know what I mean. If you're not, isn't it about time?
Member SIPC and FINRA.
The sinister cries haunted Mary through the night. Dawn neared, and still the voice tormented her. She ran towards the safety of her car, flung open the door, and a coyote had somehow gotten locked inside. But the damaged interior was covered thanks to Farmers Insurance. Coyote Carpool, August 1st, 2015. Talk to a farmer's agent. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Contact the Scott Bates Agency today, 616-531-3441. A proud supporter of MichiganGameNight.com.
All right, welcome back, Nate and Chandler. Okay, let's wrap this show up, and let's start with our end-of-season awards. Again, this is our last full episode of the show. Remember, before the year, we did some of our preseason awards. Let's figure out just quickly who our coach, player, and team of the year as of this point are. I mean, obviously, you would normally like to do the playoffs, so this mostly is just going to be for what I'll call the regular season plus 1 week, which I think is kind of the bulk of what everyone is still playing through in terms of the teams that would be eligible for these awards. Now, you might see some guys drop it off of those. And then after that, we'll look through some of the district championship games in the area and make some predictions on those games as well. All right, Chandler, let's start with our Team of the Year award. So we'll do team first. Who is your Team of the Year in West Michigan this year?
So this was a toss. There was a lot of teams that had tremendous first 10 weeks of the season so far. There was a couple different teams. The team I had picked coming into the year was Muskegon. They're looking good going into the playoffs.
They might be the Team of the Year if we did this after the
I was
last
going to
week
say,
of
I
the
think
year.
you give them a couple more weeks and they're going to establish themselves and be right there. But I think through what we've seen through the first 10 weeks of the year, you've got to give it to the Rockford Rams. I think the wins that they were able to stack up through the first 10 weeks, able to knock off Caledonia, who was one of the top teams considered one of the top teams in the state, beat the Bulldogs. I think you are undefeated to this point, a chance at a district championship this week, and probably looking at further than that if they're able to beat Caledonia. So I think you've got to give it to the Rams, or at least I'm going to.
Yeah, you have to, I think. And, the other team that definitely deserves mention is South Christian. I mean, they ran the table. They knocked off Grand Rapids Catholic Central. I think they're the other unbeaten team. Of course, Forest Hill Central. Those are kind of your big school undefeated teams. Whitehall's in there as well. But yeah, I mean, Rockford, to have the Mona Shores win on top of the OK Red wins, and I think that's pretty clear. And again, they may actually, if we were again to do this later, they may get knocked off that pedestal this weekend. Then you may have no choice to put Cal if they beat them, or then just go with one of the other teams below them. But I agree. I mean, the Rockford this year left no doubt, and I think we'll get to this Rockford Cal game. I probably think they're going to win it, and honestly, the bracket now, because Brighton got upset, the bracket's setting up real good. I believe the Rams, for the first time, and it's been a while now, are going to be playing at Ford Field right now. There's going to be a tough game in the state semifinal game again, like last year, where they, Grand Blanc put them through their paces in that game. But I think Rockford they're not beating Belleville. I can tell you that much. Or Cass Tech, whoever they're going to play, probably Belleville. But I do think they are going to the state championship game as of right now. All right, our Coach of the Year. We'll do Player of the Year last. Coach of the Year in West Michigan. Man, there are a lot of options for this one right here. I'll let you go first again.
All right, so yeah, I kind of, as I said with the Team of the Year as well, I mean, a lot of coaches that had successful seasons, I think when you're kind of breaking it down and trying to separate it, maybe you get into the criteria of who overachieved maybe what was expected or the talent that they had on the team to have the best season is kind of the way I'm going to look at it. So, of course, you could look at, you could go, Rockford Coach of the Year there as well, some of the other undefeated teams. I'm going to actually go Forest Hill Central, Coach Tim Rogers. I think on the undefeated season there, but I mean, a team that was probably expected to win the conference there.
Huge roster. I mean, they turned over almost everything on that team.
Exactly. I think with the turnover that they had and still kind of able to control pretty much all their wins, I feel like that deserves the Coach of the Year award. I'm
going to go maybe a little off the board. First off, my honorable mention, Danny Brown at South Christian for similar reasons, going unbeaten, and of course, Coach Cummings at Rockford, you can give it to him, but the Rockford, they have the piece they're supposed to have. He has the best defensive coordinator, arguably one right there in the area. They hired an NFL player to be their offensive coordinator. I'm not taking it away from Coach Cummings, but I mean, you hired the man straight out of the NFL to be your offensive coordinator. I mean, come on. He retired from the NFL, a two-time Harlan Hill winner, to be your offensive coordinator. I mean, come on. I digress. So Danny Brown at South Christian. I'm going with maybe more of the route of a team that really came from nothing to something. Nate Smith at Fruitport. What a job he did. They beat West Catholic. They have a chance to win a district championship game over Whitehall. I mean, that's a team that really has struggled the last couple of years. They have kind of been the bottom feeders or right there in not a very good OK Blue conference either. I mean, the bottom of that conference is not very good, and they've been part of the bottom of the last few years, and he turned that team into one of the bigger, led by the Jolmans, one of the bigger offensive juggernauts in the area. I mean, they played right with a whole bunch of teams. Of course, again, they're huge wins on the year. So the Fruitport team, really hats off to them on their turnaround, a great coaching job. And again, they can even add to that, Coach Smith, this weekend if they get a win as well. All right, player of the year. Before the year, we both had Tim Kloska as our player of the year, and certainly he is right in it, deserves mention. There's plenty of other guys, too, that really stepped out around the year. A lot of guys that maybe weren't as highly touted, maybe weren't as big of D1 recruits that became it by the end of the year. Once again, I'll let you lead off.
All right, I'm going back to the OK Red for this one.
All right.
Player we got to see in person twice throughout the season, Mason McKenzie, quarterback for Caledonia. I think he was just so impressive. The couple times we got to see him in person, the stats he accumulated throughout the course of the regular season, the way he led that team, got them in a district championship game against Rockford, see if they're able to pull the upset there and even further solidify his status there. But I think a guy that kind of established himself as a player that can play at the next level for sure. I mean, the talent was there. You've seen it throughout the last couple seasons, but kind of took that next step and really elevated his game this year.
I agree. Mason McKenzie, I believe, is the pick. You can argue Mac Vanderhout, Jake DeHaan, some of these other great quarterbacks. Kloska, of course, as a running back from around the area. I think McKenzie's the one that just had the biggest impact, really showed out the most. Again, I know Rockford fans would argue, again, like he did nothing against Rockford, and Vanderhout continued to put up big numbers. Like, yeah, I get it. That's probably a good argument. I agree with you on Player of the Year. I'm going to go a little bit off the board for let's call it Player of the Year / maybe Rookie of the Year. Does that count? Jaden Terry, as a guy we covered every week. This guy is a freshman in the OK Red. He rushed for 1,000 yards with 11 touchdowns in the regular season, added more in the playoff game. I mean, we are watching. There has not been a freshman, in my estimation, in this area that has quite popped off the way that young man did. And, like, the expectation to have all the hype around you coming into the year, probably our fault if there was hype around him, quite honestly, or adding to it, I guess. I mean, his play has been there and we've seen him, but, like, we probably didn't help things the second we saw his name on the roster at the start of the year. To have that hype, and then to have Tyson Mann get hurt, so you have to become the bell cow as a freshman in the OK Red, and to just go ahead and rush for 1,000 yards and put up double-digit touchdowns, like Rookie of the Year, Player of the Year even type nod. I mean, he was that incredible, and my way to really pick, I think he's going to be the Player of the Year just period in West Michigan next year.
Yeah, I think I like that, the Rookie of the Year award. I think definitely the Player of the Year is going to be down the road. I think that's
multiple probably.
Yeah, I was going to say that's definitely something he's probably going for next year. I think you're exactly right. We set the bar probably pretty high coming into the year for kind of what we thought he
Coach
could potentially
tried to lower it, man. I mean, in that first interview, we know he's a freshman. We have to no, we know what he's doing. He's only on that roster for one reason. 2 touchdowns first week of the year.
Yep. No, I think we set the bar pretty high, and he did nothing but exceed that and jumped right over it and was very impressive and a year worthy of that award.
All right. So there are your postseason awards from us, or post-regular season, or whatever you may want to call it. All right. Let's just kind of quickly, because we already have kind of covered all this last week. So let's just kind of buzz through the area. So Rockford, Caledonia, I guess we won't necessarily make picks because we've already kind of made. I mean, I know I picked Grandville for trying to push them along, sort of. And again, I'm going to just take the win that I was right because I did not account for all the injuries that happened. So who knows? It's better to be right in theory than right in actuality.
Okay.
That's what I always say. So, yeah, I mean, Rockford Cal, they get to play again. Cal has to feel really good about themselves out of the way that they played last game. I think they lose by 2 scores.
Yeah, I don't think they win either. I've got Rockford winning. The first matchup between them didn't leave me anything to make me think Caledonia was going to completely flip the script on it.
Now,
I think
Cal, we're rooting for you because we'll do your next game if you win. So maybe you bulletin board material. What I just said right there, but yeah, I don't know how much has changed.
Yeah, I mean, for Caledonia's sake, there's a chance they're getting a little healthier, especially in the backfield, kind of like we talked. And that they've made some adjustments after seeing Rockford head-to-head once. But I think the way the Rams kind of dominated that first game, I would have to expect the Rams to repeat there as district champs.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully, I don't know if anyone can actually even see this on the screen. Division 2, Forest Hills, Central, Muskegon, Mona Shores, a game that we predicted. We each predicted Mona Shores to win it, I believe, so I'd assume that's going to stay the same. I mean, Mona Shores handles business 48-20 over Traverse City Central. Forest Hills Central handles business over Reese Puffer 32-6, which is a more impressive win than Mona Shores had a couple weeks ago against Reese Puffer. So maybe a reason there to change your answer, but for me it's a little bit of you have to kind of beat. It's similar to like what we said about Rockford. You have to beat them to think that they're going to lose, and that's where I am in D2 with Mona Shores.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to switch my pick at this point. I think definitely going to be a good game. I think, Forest Hill Central is gonna be right there and have a chance to win it. I'm going to stick with the pick of Mona Shores. I think they get the win there.
All right, on to Division 3. One game I think is going to give us a fairly easy pick here in this region. Muskegon, Coopersville. Great win for Coopersville, by the way, over Cedar Springs. We both had them winning that game. Muskegon dominates Sparta. Muskegon is hitting a new level. As I said, I think Muskegon is going to be the team playing Detroit King in the state championship game. That's where I'm at with them right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing really well, and I didn't pick Coopersville in the first round, credit them on getting a win there. I think impressive. I believe OK Blue went undefeated, didn't they, in the first round? I believe that was the stat I saw, at least at one point. But,
yeah, I think,
so credit to Coopersville. Unfortunately, I think their run comes to an end here. I think Muskegon's just that good.
Yep. St. Joe, Zeeland West. I mean, St. Joe, really impressive win over East Grand Rapids. No one would have picked East Grand Rapids to win that game, of course. No one would have been dumb enough.
Yeah, no, not at all. Right. Who would do that?
No one would have tried to make that statement work. Zeeland West, Lowell. Of course, I was at that game. Zeeland West. I mean, Lowell blew 2 chances in the red zone, had a chance to win that game. I mean, it's Coach Shillito in the playoffs. Give me Zeeland West and Muskegon. I think that's where that one's going.
Yeah, I kind of think that's that rematch is setting up there. I think Zeeland West advances there as well.
Division 4? Obviously, this is, you've got Whitehall, Fruitport. I think Whitehall wins that. I mean, we talk about Fruitport's praises, but Whitehall, I think, is a little bit better version of the similar team right now, so we'll focus on South Christian and Unity Christian. South Christian is the pick, but I don't want anyone to be too surprised if and when Unity Christian wins this game.
Yeah, this is one of the tough ones. We've kind of, what do you do with Unity Christian throughout the whole year is kind of, you saw what they were last year, tough start to the season this year, but then kind of putting it together as the season goes along. So now you've got a Unity Christian team that's, kind of had the experience throughout the last couple years, but had a more mediocre regular season versus a South Christian team that had an undefeated season and a really big win for their program against GRCC. So I think South Christian wins it as well, but I think it's the toss-up of what is Unity Christian actually this year. But I think pick South Christian for this
Division 5, Oakridge Belding. We're doing that game, so we won't pick it. Grand Rapids Catholic Central wins. D6, West Catholic wins. I mean, in terms of kind of the main teams we've talked about, it's the same thing, continuing through. I think the good news here for Oakridge Belding is that they're going to get the winner of Gladwin Kingsford. That's going to have to be a neutral site, right? You would think for the regional championship. I mean, who knows, but I can't imagine they're going to have them travel there. Again, it's just Catholic Central, West Catholic, the 2 Catholic schools in West Michigan. It's setting up very well still for them right now. I don't know who's standing in their way. I think I feel pretty confident about either winning state championships. Still looking good through 1 week of the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the path is looking pretty clear for them. Going to try to avoid the upsets, but I think when you're looking at who's favored, who's kind of got that the star power and the program power, I guess those are the 2 that stand out.
All right, 6:30 p.m. on Friday. You know the deal. MichiganSportsRadio.com/MGN, all of our social media, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Pages, you can find it. Muskegon, Oakridge, and Belding. Going to be a really, really great game, I think. It's going to be a really fun game. Such different teams. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you check that out. Of course, thanks to Coach Stiegel. Thanks to the Bulldogs, Coach Landis, all the guys that joined us, the captains during the year for coming on. Thanks to everyone from Grandville that tuned in all year and everyone else that tuned into the show all year long. It's always a ton of fun to do. We always love covering the Bulldogs. Can't wait to be back on the Grandville beat. I mean, it'll be 3 weeks after the football season ends. We'll be right back at Vanderslice Gymnasium for basketball games, which I love calling high school basketball. It's such a great atmosphere, especially the Bulldogs, and what's going to be a really, really interesting team, I think, in year 2 under the new staff there. So, can't wait to get back with the Bulldogs for that, for, of course, next year as well. Thanks, Chandler, of course, all your work throughout the year. We're going to get out of here one last time here on the Tailgate. Again, I think one last time is kind of our full show. We might do some little hits here and there throughout the playoffs. Maybe if we're doing a game for Ford Field, you might do a preview show for the Ford Field game that week. We'll kind of play it by ear, but with Grandville out, with the interviews kind of wrapped up, not worth doing this full-scale show as much anymore. We'll just work on putting more content into the broadcast themselves each week. So thanks again to everyone that tuned in. Thanks, you, of course, to you, Chandler, for your work. We'll see everyone next time, 6:30. We're on the air. We're down to the show, but you don't get rid of us. We've got games to do. So we'll see everyone then.